I still remember the day I stumbled upon the cursed totem as if it were etched into my very soul. A day when I set out on what I thought would be a routine hiking expedition deep in the ancient forests of the Pacific Northwest, only to have my life upended by a discovery that defied every rational explanation. I had always been drawn to the mysteries of nature, the whispering legends passed down by local tribes about spirits that guarded the wild, but nothing could have prepared me for the sight that greeted me that mist-shrouded morning. As I navigated the labyrinth of towering cedars and moss-draped ferns, following a narrow, overgrown trail that seemed to vanish into an emerald haze, I found myself drawn to a clearing that felt charged with an inexplicable energy. In the center of the clearing, partially concealed by tangled vines and the remnants of fallen logs, stood a totem pole unlike any I had ever seen, a towering structure carved from weathered cedar, its surface etched with grotesque, contorted faces and symbols that pulsed with an almost malevolent aura. The figures on the totem seemed to leer at me with eyes that were both haunting and hypnotic, as if they were guardians of a long-forgotten curse that was now awakening with my presence. I paused, heart pounding and senses heightened, as an eerie silence fell over the forest, a silence that was at once oppressive and expectant, as if the very trees were holding their breath. Driven by a blend of morbid curiosity and an instinctive dread that I could not ignore, I approached the totem, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of pine needles and damp earth. With every step, I could feel the weight of ancient history pressing down on me, and a cold shiver ran along my spine as I reached out to trace the intricate carvings with trembling fingers. The moment my skin made contact with the rough, time-worn wood, a surge of inexplicable energy shot through me, as though the totem had reached out and bound itself to my very soul. In that instant, I recalled the whispered legends of a local indigenous people, tales of a curse cast upon a totem created to honor a vengeful spirit, a guardian of a sacred land whose anger could be stirred by even the slightest disturbance. I had dismissed those stories as folklore meant to warn the unwary, but as I stood there, I felt an overwhelming presence, as if 1,000 unseen eyes were watching me from the shadowy depths of the forest. Over the following days, I became increasingly obsessed with the totem, its image invading my thoughts and dreams with relentless persistence. I began to notice unsettling signs that the curse was not confined to that lonely clearing alone. Objects in my cabin would inexplicably shift from their places. Strange symbols appeared etched in condensation on the windows, and a pervasive chill clung to the air even on the warmest afternoons. At night, as I lay awake in the darkness, I could hear a low, rhythmic drumming, an almost imperceptible heartbeat that seemed to emanate from the totem itself, pulsing in time with my own racing pulse. Desperate for answers, I reached out to local elders and sought out the guidance of a reclusive shaman reputed to have knowledge of the ancient rites and curses that still lingered in these wild places. The shaman, a gaunt man with eyes that seemed to see beyond the veil of time, listened intently to my account before warning me in a gravelly tone that the totem was no mere relic, but a living embodiment of an ancestral curse, a curse that demanded retribution for the disturbance of sacred ground. He explained that the figures carved into the wood were not simply decorative motifs, but the anguished visages of spirits who had been wronged and condemned to wander the earth in eternal torment, their sorrow and rage now fused into the very essence of the totem. His words sent a fresh wave of dread crashing over me, yet I could not tear myself away from the mystery that had so completely ensnared my being. Determined to document every facet of this horrifying phenomenon, I set up cameras around my cabin and began recording my daily encounters with the inexplicable disturbances. I captured fleeting images of shadowy figures moving just beyond the edge of my vision, heard disembodied whispers that echoed through empty corridors, and recorded moments when the drumming grew so intense it vibrated through the very walls of my humble abode. In one particularly harrowing video log, I recounted how I awoke in the dead of night to find the totem's image reflected in every mirror in my cabin, each reflection distorting my face into a grotesque parody of my own features, as if the curse were trying to merge our identities. My attempts to rationalize the events, attributing them to fatigue or the trickery of an overactive mind, quickly crumbled in the face of mounting evidence that something truly malevolent had latched onto me. I began to experience dreams that were as vivid as they were nightmarish. Endless sequences in which I wandered through a desolate landscape of barren earth and twisted trees, guided by an unearthly light that emanated from the cursed totem, each step echoing with the sorrowful cries of long-dead spirits. In these dreams, I saw the faces carved into the totem come alive, their eyes burning with unquenchable fury as they reached out, begging for justice, their voices merging into a single, lamenting wail that chilled me to the core. The curse seemed to seep into every crevice of my existence, blurring the line between the waking world and a realm of eternal anguish, where every whispered word and every shifting shadow bore the imprint of an ancient, vengeful force. Desperate to break free from the relentless grip of the curse, I undertook a series of rituals prescribed by the shaman, a desperate, feverish attempt to appease the restless spirits and restore balance to the land. Under the light of a waning moon, deep in the heart of the forest where the totem stood like a silent sentinel, I chanted incantations in a language older than time, scattering sacred herbs and burning incense in a bid to cleanse the area of its malignant energy. For a moment, it seemed as though the curse might relent. The wind softened, and the oppressive heaviness that had long hung over the clearing dissipated into a fragile, ephemeral calm. But as the first rays of dawn broke through the treetops, a deep, resonant sound emerged from the totem, a low, mournful chant that reverberated through the forest like the tolling of a funeral bell, and in that moment, I knew that the curse was far from broken. Instead, it had deepened, intertwining itself with my very essence, a relentless reminder that some ancient wrongs could never be so easily expiated. In the days that followed, my life became a precarious balance of terror and determination as I struggled to document the ongoing horrors for my YouTube channel, hoping that my recordings might serve as a warning to others about the dangers of disturbing that which is best left undisturbed. The more I recorded, the more I noticed that the cursed totem seemed to exert a gravitational pull on the very fabric of my reality. Time itself began to warp, my memories blurred, and I found myself revisiting the clearing in my dreams with an intensity that made it impossible to distinguish between nightmare and waking life. I began to receive cryptic messages in the dead of night, scraps of text scrawled in an unfamiliar hand that warned, "Return the totem or be consumed by its curse." Messages that arrived on my doorstep on crumpled pieces of paper and in fleeting digital notes that disappeared as quickly as they were received. The local community, too, became a hushed chorus of fearful whispers, elderly residents speaking in trembling tones of a curse that had once haunted their ancestors, of a totem that had long stood as both a guardian and a harbinger of doom for those who dared trespass upon its sacred ground. Their stories painted a grim picture of a lineage of misfortune, families ruined by inexplicable tragedies, livestock found mutilated in the dead of night, and an unending succession of unexplained deaths that cast a pall of dread over the region. I felt increasingly isolated, the burden of the curse pressing down on me until it seemed to suffocate my very will to live, and every moment became a struggle against the creeping madness that threatened to overtake me. In my final video log, a desperate, raw confession recorded in the dim, flickering light of my study, I recounted the culmination of months of terror, detailing how the cursed totem had begun to manifest its power in ways I could no longer deny. The very walls of my cabin bore the intricate carvings of the totem, as if the ancient wood had seeped into my home, and my reflection in every window seemed to bear a hint of the grotesque visages that adorned that ominous pole in the clearing. With a voice that trembled between resignation and defiance, I pleaded for anyone, to heed my warnings, to understand that some secrets, ancient vengeful secrets, are not meant for human interference, for the cost of disturbing them is a soul forever ensnared in a web of despair and unyielding retribution. Even as I recorded these final words, I could feel the oppressive presence of the totem in the background, a low, persistent hum that seemed to whisper, "You cannot escape," a promise of eternal torment that chilled me to the marrow. Now, as I sit in the fragile safety of my candlelit study, the cursed totem's influence still pulsing like a dark heartbeat at the edge of my vision, I am left with a haunting, inescapable question. Have you ever dared to disturb an ancient relic, to challenge the sanctity of traditions older than time, only to find that the price of your transgression is a curse that binds your very soul to the endless, sorrowful lament of a world long forgotten